Bob Dolgan, who you might be able to see on your screen, is the founder of Turnstone Strategies, a marketing and communications firm with a specialty in nonprofit organizations, and also a board member of the Chicago Ornithology Society. He writes This Week in Birding newsletter, which is published twice each week. So it should be like twice each week in birding. I don't know.
Beginning and the end of the week.
Yeah, he's written in the past for the Chicago Tribune, Cleveland Plain Dealer, Chicago Reader, Chicago Wilderness, Richmond Times Dispatch, and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I write for the Erie Reader, by the way.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, and Monty and Rose, the film that you're going to see tonight, is his first film and was created when he was a volunteer plover monitor in Chicago in 2019. Monty and Rose 2 is in the works. And so hopefully Bob will give us a preview on that. And he's from Northeast Ohio, the Cleveland area?
Yeah, like the east suburbs, Willoughby and,
okay.
and Euclid. Yeah.
So here he is, everybody. Go for it, Bob.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to bring the story here to another Great Lakes locale that has piping plovers. I'm just going to share a few slides by way of introduction, and then I'll throw it over to the film. So I just want to give a sense of where the places that we're talking about, because there might be some geographical similarities to the shoreline there in Northwest Pennsylvania. So let me put this into slideshow. And so this is sort of a map of the north side of Chicago. You've got on the right-hand side, the big blue area is Lake Michigan, and on the left is the interior of the city, and in the middle is the shoreline, starting from downtown all the way north to Evanston. And this little white circle shows Montrose Point, which is where this story takes place. And this is a noted migrant trap. Over 350 species of birds have been seen here. And it's known for a place called the Magic Hedge, which is a bunch of plantings that have attracted just myriad species through the years. But it also has a really nice dune habitat, while small, that attracts a whole range of shorebirds and other species. So this just gives you kind of an overview of the locale, and you can see here kind of in the middle is this more where these plantings are. This is more of an upland area that has a mix of meadows and a few woods and shrubs. But to the north is this big dune area that's sprouted up over the past almost 20 years. And that's where this story takes place. And this is a very high quality dune area. There's something like almost 30 endangered and threatened plant species, 18 endangered and threatened bird species that at least stop in this area. So it's quite a small but amazing space. And so actually I have a slide here that that notes some locales that are close to you, like including Presque Isle. And so I just put this slide together using eBird data to kind of show some of the top migrant traps sort of in Eastern North America. Some of this is a little out of date, and certainly you could question, like, you know, a few places like Cape May has about 5 different hotspots that are listed in eBird, but this just gives you a sense. I like to be a sort of promoter of Chicago birding, and you can see here Montrose Point, it's actually up over 350 species now, with the additions of the likes of an ancient murrelet not long ago. Somebody had a Cassin's kingbird. So it's an amazing place, and I even locally, it doesn't almost get the amount of credit that it should, but it's really known as a migrant trap. And this is me out, you know, during a spring, kind of a cold spring day, which is typical there. And I'm usually looking for migrating birds. There's probably maybe about 20 or so breeding species at the location, but there really aren't many. There aren't many breeding species. You can go to almost any forest preserve around here and probably get more than 20 in the middle of summer. But piping plovers have stopped by there through the years. But what was really stunning about this is that a pair started showing nesting behavior at the end of May, now almost 2 years ago, and that took everybody by surprise. No piping plovers had nested in the city limits for more than 60, almost 70 years. And so it had just been presumed that piping plovers wouldn't nest here. And their population has been very low. At one point in about 1990, there were only 13 nesting pairs left on the Great Lakes. And so I just wanted to include this slide that shows the locations, and we do have nesting pairs on all of the Great Lakes, thanks to Pennsylvania on Lake Erie and Presque Isle. But this has really grown, and 30 years ago, these dots were confined to a small area just kind of in northern Michigan over by Sleeping Bear Dunes, and now the population's expanded. Still have a ways to go, but it has expanded. So I'm just going to pause there and kind of flip over to the film. It's 23 minutes in length, so it's not super long, but I think it gives you enough of a sense to get into the story. And what this shows is from June 2019 to August 2019. So it's this really compact story of that first breeding season over at Montrose that took everybody by such surprise. So, and then I'll come back. I have a few other slides and I can answer any questions that you have afterwards. So let me just flip this over. And I'm going to mute myself and turn it over to the film. So here we go, Monty and Rose. And it'll take just a second for the sound to come up, so be ready.
When people first saw the plovers starting to make little scratches in the sand, and then people said, well, maybe they will nest here, and we said yes.
I remember when I first read the news, I honestly couldn't believe it at first.
These birds obviously saw something in this patch of beach that was suitable for their nesting habitat, and so that's where they decided to stake their claim.
Well, it was like, oh my goodness, will they survive? Will they be able to fledge on such a highly used and active beach?
And I didn't know how to react, whether it was excitement as well. I know the reality of it and the challenges, and just recognizing the juxtaposition of this beach. I wasn't sure whether it was a naivete that I appreciated, that sure, we'll see how this goes.
For them to pick a spot where it wasn't going to conflict with humans was basically impossible.
So the first thing that went through my mind is we have to protect these nests. And remember, at the time there was no enclosure. It was just open to anyone to walk around. That first location that the plovers chose was, from a people standpoint, a crazy location.
Monty had actually done his goose stepping and was approaching Rose, And so we knew that mating was going to be very, very shortly.
I was very concerned with the, just how busy this beach is. And when I learned that they had nested in an area prone to flooding, I was very worried.
On June 12th, I came. Rose was on the nest. The 4 eggs had been laid, and everything looked so peaceful. It looked like we were going to have a successful nesting experience. As we started looking at the forecast for the rest of the day, it was high winds, torrential rains, but even more concerning, a strong storm surge from the lake. There was already a lot of water on the beach, and there was a good chance that the water would rise to cover the nest.
So it's been raining on and off for a couple of hours now, and we're worried about the water coming closer to Monty and Rose's nest. One of the fears is that they'll abandon the nest if it goes underwater, and it's likely to rain even more this afternoon, so we're really not sure what will happen.
I looked and saw the waves building on Lake Michigan. We knew we were in trouble. And they were calling for 35 to 40 mile an hour north winds.
And it's a really sad day. You can see the water is come all the way up the beach. It's flooded the nest site of Monty and Rose.
It was very distressing to me. The 4 eggs were removed around 6 p.m. that day. By the next morning, the nest was under a foot of water, so it was definitely the right decision to make.
So unfortunately that first nest had to be salvaged because the lake levels did rise that night and washed out.
In the initial day or so after the eggs were removed, I didn't actually think that there would be another nest. But then right afterwards, Monty started scraping nests again. Some of them were close to where the initial nest was. The other ones were much higher on that area of the beach, but closer to the boardwalk. And you could see that Rose didn't want to go back to that initial nest because it had flooded.
There was still hope that they would try again. Just knowing what the topography of the beach and the flooding issues on the beach, I just wasn't sure where that was going to happen again.
And then one day we realized that they were interested in the volleyball court area, which is an area that makes so much sense from a nesting standpoint because it's high and dry. In all the storms that we had, that area wasn't underwater. So when they actually scraped their final and second nest inside the roped off area where the bank swallows nest, it looked extremely promising.
Way back about 14 years ago, we created some interpretive signs for Montrose Beach Dunes, and this sign right here behind me is our welcome sign up by the sidewalk. And in preparing that sign, the most iconic bird we could think of to put on it was a piping plover, so we've got a picture here. And never in a million years did I dream that these birds would actually show up and nest right practically next to the sign, but in fact that's what they did.
To party or not to party? That is the question facing several groups near the lakefront on the city's north side. Promoters are planning a big music festival on Montrose Beach called Man Be on the Beach, but the event has drawn opposition from a few local organizations who are concerned about traffic, beach access, and some endangered birds that have recently made the beach home.
So we got a request through the Park District from the promoter of the festival to have a meeting to discuss what they could do or how they could assure that the beach would be appropriately used to do if they were to have the Manby Festival here. And we did meet with them and we got some answers, but we weren't satisfied that the plovers could be appropriately protected.
I'd say I'm actually kind of disappointed in that the narrative even became that, the concert versus the birds, because this is something that we've been hearing for decades. And before I was born, this sort of, friendly neighborhood business person versus nature. And, you know, this is 2019. We should be well beyond that narrative. There was no reason that, you know, we couldn't have had both in some capacity.
I don't know why the Park District, you know, and then I look at them as the real villains in this. They're the real enemy in this. Why they were not absolutely adamant about enforcing the protections inherent in the word sanctuary. I got really angry, and I went on social media and I, you know, held up a picture that said, "Move the Mamby at the Beach Festival."
Every nesting pair in the population is critical in order to maintain the viability of this population. So the Endangered Species Protection Act was established in 1973, and with that law comes a lot of federal guidelines and protection. But we recognized right from the beginning that we didn't want to come in and say, yeah, the feds are going to come in, the state's going to come in. The first thing we try to do is work with the Park District, work with the local organizations, work with the local volunteers. What can we do to cooperatively work to try to get this plover pair to be successful?
There he is.
For that nest location. So once they're
It's so exciting. Can you see them?
People were really rooting for these plovers to succeed. They wanted to make it. So we started seeing a lot of volunteers email and sign up.
And at that point, we really didn't know what the response would be or how many volunteers we would need. We just knew that we wanted to try to cover as much of the daylight hours as possible.
People were always stopping by. Most of them were really excited that this was happening here. So I think it speaks well for the efforts of the Park District to create natural areas and to maintain them in a way that makes people understand nature a little better.
And then there was a call out for a need for volunteers, and it just really piqued my interest. I didn't know what to expect at first because I'm not a birder per se, so I was a little intimidated by some of the knowledge that some of the other volunteers had about birds. The reactions were just pure joy. I'm really excited to see the birds nesting there.
We wanted to make sure that some of the volunteers could focus on the people, educate them about the plovers, show them the plovers in their binoculars or their scopes. I think these birds have been tremendous ambassadors to birding, to birds, to having wildlife within your city. It's a great story of engaging people and bringing them on board. They laid the first egg, and then they laid the second egg. And this time, because it was a second clutch, IDNR and Fish and Wildlife Service decided to put the exclosure after the second egg. Usually they like to wait to the third or fourth egg. Incubation started on June 24th.
And that first night, the incubating bird would come off the nest all throughout the night, but we couldn't tell what she was coming off or that bird was coming off the nest for. So we actually established a secondary camera that was just a little bit further back so that we could get a broader view of the nesting area. And that second camera was quite revealing that all night long there were skunks passing by the nest, there were raccoons passing by the nest. On one occasion there was a stray dog that went running by the nest. And you could just tell that the amount of activity at that nest site certainly would have been a nesting failure if that cage hadn't been in place.
Sunlight glints upon the bay. I look around for more like me. There are fewer every day. The sun is rising, waves are lapping at the shore. What does our future hold if I can't find them anymore? And now they're coming like they do all the time. They
had to really make sure that they survived this environment.
I think I was amazed at how quickly they were just out and about.
After they hatched and they started moving around, that probably was the most stressful time, because basically they're these cute little fluff balls running around, but that's all they can do, run around. They can't fly, you know, their parents can only do so much to defend them.
Dogs off leash, even though they're not supposed to be, are always a problem here. Obviously even just like the ATVs and things, the beach combers that are out here every day. So there's just a lot of things, a lot of noise.
What we're worried about is not necessarily as much the chicks being afraid of people, but stopping to feed. The entire goal of those first few weeks on the beach is for the chicks to feed, gain body fat, gain strength, so that they can fly away.
With, 100 and whatever people it was protecting them, I was still concerned for the survival of the chicks.
The number of predators, the number of threats just increased many times over as soon as those birds left that cage. Nearby we had the gulls that could very quickly come down, swoop down and grab a chick and fly off with it. Crows that could be passing by, great blue herons, black-crowned night herons. Once they hatch, they leave the nest, and so they wouldn't retreat back to the safety of that cage. There are known mink in the area, there's foxes in the area, coyotes in the area.
And as I was breaking down that one day, putting my scope away, I noticed there was a shape in the flooded area where the plovers had been hanging out, or I last saw them before the sun went down, that wasn't there before. And sure enough, it was a black-crowned night heron that had somehow snuck his way into the flooded area without anybody noticing, myself included. And, I've been birding long enough to know that black-crowned night herons are incredibly awesome birds and also incredibly merciless, and I have seen what they can do to their prey. So I had to rush out there with a flashlight and flash around and try to get it to fly out of that space.
One thing that was absolutely amazing was the two plovers' ability to take care of themselves and their chicks. They were seen and photographed chasing gulls, chasing mallards. The two of them ganged up on a great blue heron and chased great blue heron. One day, 12 killdeers came into the enclosed area, and the chicks were still here. And Monty went after every single killdeer one at a time. We thought we would have to intervene because 12, we thought, oh, that's a huge number of killdeers for one plover to take on. He actually kind of like had a line and would go in a line and move one killdeer after the other closer to the outside of the enclosure until finally they were all outside of the enclosure. It was just masterful. Rose was as ferocious as Monty when she needed to be. I have pictures of her going after gulls. Boy, it was like karate moves. I mean, those gulls had no chance. They had to leave. On July 28th, I came to Montrose and I asked people whether all three chicks were present, and they weren't totally affirmative about it. And I start looking around and, I'm not seeing three chicks. I only see two. So I continue to observe. Eventually, Monty and the two chicks go to the body of water that's within the enclosure and go feeding there. But that one chick is standing, totally motionless. The chick standing up and with eyes closed wasn't just normal behavior.
Louise gave her authorization to collect the bird and immediately take it to the Lincoln Park Zoo, where the curator was set up and had called the veterinary group there at the Lincoln Park Zoo. Unfortunately, that chick did end up passing.
The chick that passed away didn't have any outward sign of being hurt or harmed, so there was a question mark as to what had happened to it. And of course, that raised concern about could it happen to the other chicks. So we basically doubled our effort about watching them, monitoring them. We really, fortunately, never saw the same signs with the other two chicks.
get 2 out of the 3 is just absolutely amazing.
It's just been one of the most exciting things I've ever experienced, and also incredibly gratifying, because I know that the reason these birds came to this beach is because of the quality of the open beach and also the presence of the dunes, which is the type of habitat that they're comfortable in.
And literally hundreds and hundreds of people a day were going by this nest, and just that opportunity to share this very special event with so many people in Chicago is literally an outdoor classroom.
What made them special was that they're an incredible organism that we share this planet with. And we, going forward as a city, as a country, a state, people, whatever you name it, it's up to us to, give them that space, considering that they didn't have the space because of us.
This was a one in the win column in the age of Trump. This is one where the environment won. What's happened with Montrose is the culmination of a restoration effort that started in the mid-60s. I guess Mr. Landy and Dr. Beecher, they spearheaded this thing. And native grasses, ridding it of invasive species. I mean, they've really made a paradise. If these guys were alive to see that there were piping plovers nesting there, they'd be in tears.
People and volunteers who have been birders for 20, 30, 40 years, who have said this has been their most meaningful experience in their birding life. Certainly for me, it was a magical summer.
My dream is to have this spread over the whole Great Lakes area, and every small piece of beach that we can have some kind of stewardship program in place should any endangered birds, not just the plovers, choose to nest in these areas. There's so little habitat left for these birds, and we have to share that with them, and it's all about educating people how to do that.
Said the creek to me, are you really free? All we can ever be is open. Said the field as well, how can you tell just where you're going when your eyes aren't open? Said the creek to me, my path is clear, but it ever narrows. They're building walls of sun. Said the field as well, it's hard to tell what your path will be unless you look to me and let me guide you. We're hoping that they'll stay together, but it's hard to predict the weather. Instead of our lives with joy, stop to wade in the water, climb.
All right, so I'm going to stop there and switch over. Got a few more slides to share, and then I'm glad to take a few questions. So some news here. So you heard Tony Fitzpatrick there, the actor and artist, sometimes described as outspoken. That's probably an understatement. Tony kind of took the Park District to task in that piece, and the Park District has since redeemed themselves. And so we have some news here just from the past 10 days or so. And what happened was, really, this was in part a product of the beach being closed last year. So the beach was closed to the public last year due to COVID-19. And what happened in the plover habitat was that that some amazing plants kind of started to reclaim the beach, species like sea rocket and others. And that kind of got people thinking, like, well, maybe that 3 acres or so where the plovers have been feeding the past years could be permanently protected. It's been roped off already for plovers, but maybe it should be added to the dune area, which is about a 12-acre parcel. So 3 acres added would be quite a substantial addition. But there hasn't been an addition of any sort here since 2005. So after about 6 months of work with the Park District and a number of letters and calls and emails and some testimony, they finally agreed to expand the habitat by 3 acres. And that news just came last week on April 7th. So here's a piece that was in the Chicago Tribune. It got good coverage on pretty much most of the major media outlets in town. So hooray for that. So we're waiting for Monty and Rose to come back this year. And we've got a more protected area for them when, let's hope it's a when, let's hope they do return this year. And the odds are good that they will. So this is the area that was just added to the natural area where it had been sort of temporarily closed off for the plovers. Now it'll be permanently available, and we call it the floodle. It's a flooded area that's a little more than a puddle, and it's a sort of ephemeral wetland that's just laden with the types of aquatic invertebrates, worms, you name it, that beetles, etc., larvae that pipe plovers love to feed on, and a lot of other shorebird species. We probably have had 20 shorebird species utilize this little body of water through the past couple of years. So where are they now? Rose has been seen the past 2 years down in Florida. So Rose, because the birds are banded, we know, and because there are people looking for them down south, we know generally where the birds are. And so Rose has been down kind of on the Gulf Coast of Florida near Tarpon Springs, which is really exciting. This was from December. And Monty, until just a few months ago, it was still a mystery exactly where Monty was, but now we know for sure that Monty spends his winters down in a place called Bolivar Flats, Texas, which is on the Gulf Coast near Galveston. And he was photographed by an American Bird Conservancy staffer in January. So we know this again because of the bands. Monty has a green band to go with his orange and silver. Rose has a blue band. And you also might be wondering what happened last year. So last year there were 3 chicks, and their names are Esperanza, Hazel, and Nish. One of the super cool things about last year that's different from 2 years ago is because the beach was quieter, these birds could be banded by the folks responsible for that with the Great Lakes Piping Plover Recovery Effort. So Esperanza, Hazel, and Nish were banded, and here's a shot of Esperanza with its bands. So very cool. Now we might have a sense of where these Chicago hatch chicks end up in the future. And one thing we've learned is that Hazel was down along the Georgia coast. So Hazel was photographed by Pat and Doris Leary down in Cumberland Island seashore in September. So that's pretty awesome. And then around the same time, Esperanza was photographed there, and Nish, the third one, was over there by Mom in the Gulf Coast of Florida. So that is just so exciting. And I'd have to say that the big question on most of our minds going into this is, where are these chicks going to end up in 2021? It really could probably be almost anywhere from Michigan to Illinois to Wisconsin. So that's it for my little slide presentation. This is my information if you'd like to stay in touch or learn more about the project and what's next. So some of these things that I mentioned are going to be featured in the next film, which will be an hour long. I also did have a chance to film up in Michigan where the birds were hatched in 2017. And so there's going to be a much more thorough story, and we kind of trace their lives over now. This will be the 5th year here coming up. So it's going to be a lengthier story, and we're going to get into a few things we didn't have time to get into there in the first one. And then I do have that newsletter. It comes out twice a week, and it's called This Week in Birding. It's free. And then you've got ChicagoPipingPlovers.org is an amazing hub of information with everything you need to know about the Chicago plovers and the latest on them. And then social media handles here. You can find me on all these places. I also do have another film that I made about a wintering piping plover called Dodger. It's a 2-minute film. It's available for free on Vimeo. You can get to it through these websites too. And there's even another plover film I made called Postcard from Waukegan that is available there too. So probably more than you could ever imagine in terms of plover films. So, but I thank you so much for the opportunity, and glad to take any questions you may have.
Sue, are you around?
I am here. Yes.
Okay, because your video's there. Okay. Do you want to tell people to type your questions in the chat box?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Anybody wanted to put their questions in the chat box, or, there's some kind of feature here where you can raise your hand. I don't know if I would be able to use it. Oh, boy.
Well, if you don't know where the chat box is, if you go down to the bottom of your screen, a menu lights up, and it says like the number of participants in the chat, and you can hit chat and that'll come up, and then you can type in your message down at the bottom.
Participants. Okay. All right. So Freda says if I click on the participants list and keep it open, I'll see a raised hand. The only thing is the participants list is bigger than my screen.
Right.
Okay,
that's the problem.
Yeah. Okay. Carolyn Sturdivant wants to know, when's the expected arrival date for plovers in the Great Lakes?
Bob, I can field that.
Go ahead.
Plovers have already arrived in Michigan. So they're on their way. Anytime between now and middle March, depending on their age. Usually the more older, more experienced birds show up early, and the younger birds show up later. The first timers. If you may recall, back in 2017, our pioneer Jerry showed up. Well, actually, in 2016, he showed up like on May 8th. That's late, but he was a first-year bird. In years past, he's been here on the first day that I've done plover monitoring, April 15th.
Okay. Well, Mary, this is a question for you. Carolyn knows that you're sworn to silence, but she wants to know about your level of happiness throughout the summer.
My level of happiness throughout the summer. Well, watching those the pictures of Monty and Rose and the chicks, it gets me all warm inside. It's what I want to see every summer. I long for it in the winter. I am not particularly happy about the walk out to Gallpoint when it's really cold and rainy, but I get so excited and happy, and I can't wait, to see them again. But I also am a realist and know that things happen, and we may not have plovers nesting this year because sometimes that happens. And you just have to be a bit philosophical about that. And you know, I can cry in my pillow at home, but I just have to, you know. But yeah, I mean, I live for summer when I can be with my birds.
And Brian wants to know, can you talk about piping plovers the day in Chicago and what happens on that day? This would be for Bob. Talk about
Oh yeah,
piping
piping
plovers.
plover day.
Okay.
Yeah. The governor declared November 18th Piping Plover Day in Illinois, and so what we did that very first time was, it was a little bit subdued last year, but in 2019 we had a beach cleanup in the morning. We had a bird walk. Actually, we had two beach cleanups, one in Waukegan and one in Chicago, and we had a bird walk along the lakefront. We also had a toast at a happy hour at a bar to commemorate the day that the chicks were hatched. I think that had been almost exactly 4 months before that. And we got some media coverage. You know, it was just a fun day. It was also the first day that I showed the film in the evening at Music Box Theater, which is a historic theater here on the north side of Chicago. And it was just a great day. It was a great opportunity. The governor issued a formal proclamation kind of on parchment, like with a signature and everything. And it was just, that is one of those things that I think has really helped to kind of reinforce the legend of Monty and Rose. And subsequent to that, we had a beer brewed called Piping Plover Pale Ale, and a percentage of profits from also, I should add, we were very true to Great Lakes ecosystems, in that part of the flavoring of the beer is through the prickly pear cactus, which can be found in some of these locations where the piping plovers nest. And so that it was not, you know, literally from the Great Lakes, but it was pear cactus from elsewhere, and it made this nice little citrusy flavor to the beer. And so a brewery made that, and then a percentage of sales from that went to Chicago Ornithological Society, which is one of the lead organizations on the project in terms of volunteering. So, so there just have been a lot of things like that. We had a right before the shutdown, we had a concert, and then showed the film at a small music venue here in town, which was a lot of fun. And so, but anyway, thanks for asking about that, because Piping Plover Day was a lot of fun and definitely a highlight. And hopefully there'll be more of those things will be coming back this year, and we'll actually be able to get together. We have a really cool initiative here in Chicago called Birds and Beers, that for several years has had gatherings at breweries among birders. And, you know, hopefully we'll be getting back to that sometime soon. A lot of people go to those also, were Plover volunteers and just people, you know, birders who see each other a lot. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Carolyn Sturdivant offers an observation. You are able to share the Plover story in the Chicago community in ways that we do not, or not. Would you like to address that, Bob?
All right, I get it now. Well, you know what? Something, this is interesting, because I've been thinking about this lately, because I think in some places, I think in Michigan, they try to really keep sort of quiet where the plovers are exactly, like up at Sleeping Bear Dunes, places like that. And I mean, part of it was there was no choice. Like this was too public of a location for this to be kept quiet. I mean, there just wasn't, at least in my opinion. And And our local wildlife officials, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Illinois DNR, Chicago Park District, there was almost no chance that nobody within that group wanted to keep it quiet. And I think there was an understanding that there would need to be some work with the community to make this actually end up being successful. And so, and there's just so many people, I mean, out at the beach, they're just like, they're volleyball players, you know, kayak rentals, there's a restaurant there, there's so many people walking by that, you know, I remember soon after Monty and Rose landed, I was just in a bar. It sounds like I'm in bars a lot, but I guess I was before the shutdown. But I was in a bar, and there were a couple of guys next to me talking about how their volleyball league had been shut down because of some birds, and I was thinking to myself, like, are they talking about the same situation? Are they talking about Monty and Rose? And they were talking about the piping plovers, and they actually, when I first heard them talking, they were they didn't sound real happy about it. And I sort of interjected and started talking to them just to kind of, you know, just to learn a bit more, but also make the point that there's meaning to having the plovers there too, and that's important. And so there was kind of the talk of the town. I think it would have been really hard to, you know, to have it be kept quiet there at such a public location. But one thing I, you know, occasionally think about is just like, it's so public, like, and maybe that could be a risk, but at the same time, the Monty and Rose and their volunteers and protectors are so fierce that I feel pretty good about their well-being, and people are there literally from dawn to dusk. And even on 4th of July, when there's fireworks all over, etc. And they really are, I think they're in pretty good hands. So, and we also have the police and security. We have Chicago Police Department comes by, and Chicago Park District Security come by regularly. So there are quite a few layers of, you know, protection there. Thanks for asking, though.
Well, I have a couple questions. I don't see anything in the chat. I noticed that when you share the pictures, this is a technical question, I'm sorry for everybody. I noticed that Monty and Rose still have their chick bands. They've never been rebanded as adults.
Yeah, no, I did not even know that until you mentioned something earlier about chick bands. Yeah, as far as I know, those are the original bands, and I actually wasn't even aware that there was a process through which like adults were sort of recaptured and rebanded.
When they're on the nest. When they're on the nest.
Yeah, that has not happened here.
Yeah, okay. I just saw the bands and I thought those are chick bands because the orange band has a colored dot on it, and the violet band has a number, and that's a chick band combination. All the chicks get the same bands, but they have different dots, colors, and different numbers. Yeah. And so I was just curious about that because our adults have been, our parents have been rebanded as adults.
Yeah.
Okay. I was curious.
And that goes back some years. I mean, you know, in 2018, they were in Waukegan, north of here, and yeah, apparently they weren't rebanded there either. But it's interesting. I'm going to file that away and ask about it at some point.
Well, the only way that you can do it is if they're on the nest, and we can talk about the procedure some other time because I don't want to have to get into it here for everybody listening. But I do have. Or first, are you still a volunteer? Do you still volunteer monitor? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I will be Wednesday afternoons coming up here soon, hopefully. So.
So you can't ask me, but I can ask you. Have they had plovers yet?
No, we've not had any. Not a one. Almost no. Very little shorebird activity. I think we might have had like a yellow legs out at Montrose, but that's about it. So but the Monty was seen 2 years ago on April 20th. So that would be, that's, a date from the past, but last year it was May 1st that they came back. So
Wow,
yeah.
that's really late. I mean, for established birds.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there, I know there was a front that moved through Galveston recently. People here are watching things like that.
Me too.
But however, it didn't seem, if maybe he took advantage of it and it stopped over somewhere in the interior. But no, people are watching every day, and no sightings yet. So
okay. You're from Northeast Ohio. Did you ever come to Prescott? Have you been here?
No. I used to drive up through, just on 90. I drive on my way to Canada regularly, but never stopped. I mean, never. I would go out to, like, I've been to Conneaut, Ohio. I've been to Geneva on the Lake, Menor Headlands, places like that. But I've never been to Presque Isle.
Well, here's an open invitation. We have an extra bedroom. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'd love that. I'd like nothing more than that, and I'd love to come back out that way. My parents live here now in the Chicago area, so I don't get back to Cleveland as much as I used to. But thank you so much. I'd enjoy that. Yeah.
Anytime.
And likewise, same here. Come out to Chicago. And
unfortunately, I can't come.
Right, you're
during
there.
my season. But do you know Todd Plover?
Yeah.
From New Jersey.
Yeah,
he's coming out to see Monty and Rose this summer, and he might stop here on the way.
It's so awesome. Yeah, he and I have kind of become acquainted, and we did a screening with his group in New Jersey in March, and I'm hoping to see him here and hang out over at Montrose. That'd be a thrill. Yeah, and he's got his hands full with 40 pairs or whatever it is over there.
Right.
So
which I would love, but
me too.
I don't think I have the acreage for 40 pairs. But anyways, any other questions? Oh, there's more questions. Go ahead.
Carolyn wants to know, is your film a hobby or a career, filming?
I mean, it definitely started as a hobby, but I'm starting to shape it into more of a career. My career before this was in nonprofit, working in nonprofit organizations, did a lot of communications, advocacy, and in working on the film, for one, I've really enjoyed it, but also there seems to be quite a lot of opportunity to tell stories like this about birds, and it's been pretty well received here in Chicago. And so I'm going to see if I can keep doing that. But right now it's a side project. My consulting work is my where my salary is coming from, but I'm thinking about some ways to broaden it out. And I have a couple other film ideas that are not plover films, but about other birds. So I'm working on that, but thanks for asking.
Okay. And this next question is for Mary. Why is our plover monitoring so secretive compared to Chicago's?
The Pennsylvania Game Commission is been designated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as having jurisdiction over the endangered species, the piping plover, and they make the rules, and in conjunction with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. I'm not going to get into like a whole long sequence about the relationship between U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the Game Commission and the Erie Bird Observatory. The Erie Bird Observatory is a contractor to the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. So the people at Presque Isle State Park, DCNR, are the people who issue the contract. But it is, because the Game Commission has jurisdiction, we need to follow their rules, and those are their rules.
Thank you. I have a question. In years gone past, probably decades gone past, where did the piping plovers traditionally nest at Presque Isle? Was it just on the tip or even on the beaches where people were swimming and picnicking? Do you know that?
Well, yes. The area that is designated critical habitat is from the lighthouse all the way out to Gallpoint. And that area from the lighthouse out is their historical nesting sites. In Gallpoint wasn't nearly as long as it is now. It was much shorter if you look at older maps. And this applies to common terns as well. Common terns also nested there. So as the point grows out, the habitat changes, and then some work was done in, I don't know, the early 20th century. They planted a lot of trees to help with erosion. And that tree line that's now established between the lighthouse and Beach 10 makes the habitat unsuitable for plovers because they don't want to be close to trees.
Okay.
And but there are areas between Beach 10 and Gallpoint now that are actually opening up that is not part of the natural closed area. That, if the beach gets any wider, there's potential for nesting habitat there for both common terns and piping plovers, especially common terns, because they're a little less fussy about how close to the tree line they are. But yeah, the historical range was from the lighthouse, and that's why we have to monitor from the lighthouse all the way up to Gallpoint, because that was a historical range. And that was when it was established by U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the designated critical habitat started at the lighthouse.
Okay. Do you have a camera, a nighttime camera on the nesting area the way that Chicago does at Montrose Park?
The Game Commission has a camera that is positioned on the nest 24 hours. I don't have access to those photographs. I can only get them if the Game Commission shares them with me.
Do they ever say they pick up anything interesting on that camera?
Let's not talk about that.
All right. Do you have problems, or do we in Erie have problems with too many people trying to get out there despite all the signage telling people to stay away?
There's lots of, despite the signage, there are people who will still land their kayaks there, who will walk their dogs off leash all the way out there. People who either don't understand the signs or are just ignoring them on purpose. Every season is different. All of the signage is up now, which is early for the season. And I'm hoping, but sometimes I'm designated. I can call the park rangers. They can't come out to Gallpoint quickly. So I am authorized to stop people if I think there's an imminent threat.
Okay.
And that's all laid out in multi-page work statement.
Okay, thanks. And Julie wants to know, is the trail officially open to Gallpoint this year?
At this point, yes, as of today, yes. That's all I can say. When we rerouted the trail again this spring, from where it was last year, because the water has dropped so tremendously. We're hoping that it will remain open. We did our best to make sure that it's not close to any potential nesting sites.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone? For Mary or Bob?
I'm sorry, Bob. I feel like I stole your thunder.
No, I'm enjoying hearing about your plovers and your work. So this is great.
Well, I did want to tell you, I noticed that they had the salvage nest that they had we had actually had 2 nests the first year in 2017, and one nest got washed out like Chicago.
Yeah.
And those eggs were salvaged and they went into an incubator, and they ended up in Michigan at the captive rearing facility.
Yeah.
And two of them survived.
Oh, did they?
So
yeah.
we're very, we were,
grow to fledge? Were they fledged?
yes,
Or, yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So we're very happy about that, even though that was kind of a tragic, tragic moment. But I wanted you to know that like captive rearing does work.
Yeah, I'm amazed. That is so incredible. That's great. Yeah.
Well, it was an incredible effort. The Game Commission, I mean, I was out there and I could see the water coming up, and I notified everybody that I was supposed to notify, and the Game Commission showed up on a boat and rescued the eggs, and he actually was on the phone with Tractor Supply for an incubator. You know, it's like, how late are you open? You know, kind of thing.
Wow.
And he had him in the incubator overnight. In the meantime, the Game Commission game warden was like tasked with picking up the incubator and transporting them to the Detroit Zoo.
Yeah.
And then the zoo transferred them to, they met halfway between Erie and Detroit.
Yeah.
And then from Detroit, they went up to the captive rearing in northern Michigan.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was an amazing operation. And I was so pleased to find out that 2 of our chicks hatched.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, and they really have replenished the population because of that effort. I mean, in terms of, I want to say, I think one of Monty and Rose's grandparents maybe was a captive raised chick. So that
nice.
kind of says it all right there. I mean,
yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty cool. That's great to hear. Yeah, we did not have luck with the eggs that were taken.
Well, they were very young eggs, were they not?
Yeah, they had just been a few days, and they were taken away, and so yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that was very early.
Ours were about a week from hatch, so that makes a big difference.
All right, yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, here's a question, another question. This is probably for Bob. Are plover wintering grounds affected by the volcanic eruption at St. Vincent's? And where are wintering plovers generally found?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Thankfully, I don't think they're affected by that eruption. That's a little bit far south. There are some wintering plovers in the Bahamas, on the islands of Abaco, Eleuthera, but the bulk, and particularly the Great Lakes birds, are kind of on the Georgia coast, Florida coast. I think Texas coast is sort of unusual for Great Lakes birds, but Monty's everywhere. So yeah, and you might have, I don't know if you have other insights, Mary, as to locations, but I know it to be kind of the Georgia coast, the Gulf Coast of Florida. I think South Carolina has maybe had some in the past.
We all of our birds have been mostly recited on the Gulf Gulf side of Florida.
Okay.
But I was actually in the Bahamas for the 5-year winter census.
Oh, cool.
And we found a Great Lakes plover there, and in
That
the
wasn't Bahama Mama by any chance?
it was not Bahama Mama.
Okay.
It was no, it
Bahama.
was a Great Lakes. It was a Great Lakes piping plover, it was we found it at it was, well, we were in the Berry Islands.
Oh yeah, the Berry Islands. Yeah.
Yeah, we were in the berries, and we found it in one place, and then like 2 days later we found it on a different island, which was very bizarre, you know, because they say that like they have winter fidelity as well as, you know, breeding.
Yeah, breeding
Fidelity. And so and then when we came home, we figured out that that bird had been sighted and photographed in Cleveland.
Really?
On the Ohio, yeah, on the shores of Lake Erie, like the year before, by a really good friend of mine.
Oh my gosh. I love
Yeah.
it.
And it was very bizarre. I mean, it was the same bird. And you know, but he's a Michigan bird, and he just happened to be stopping, you know, in Lake Erie before he goes to Michigan.
Wow.
But yeah, it was I wrote a story for ABA magazine about my trip to the Bahamas, if you want to look it up.
I will look up.
It's for birding, ABA birding magazine. I think it's called Plovers in Paradise.
All right.
Because, you know, I left Erie and went to the Bahamas in February. So, you know.
That is cool. Oh, I think I've read that now that I think about it. That sounds so familiar.
That was me.
Okay.
I left my poor man who's sitting back here. I left him home in Erie while he was.
How did you get in on that? I've asked you, who do you talk to about that? We don't know.
Yeah, who do you talk to about
offline? Because that would be fun.
Yes. Well, our executive director, Sarah Sargent, used to work for Audubon, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
She became connected to the Audubon. It does a lot of is involved in the winter census. Walker Golder, who has done a lot of Bahama censuses. So she was connected to him, and then she also connected locally to somebody who owned homes on Great. Do you remember the name? No. Why would you remember? One of the small Berry Islands. Well, actually, it's one of the big Berry Islands because they actually have commerce and, you know, hotels and things like that. But they owned property there, and so she got us an in with Walker to do the census on those islands, and then the local friend gave us a townhouse to stay in because they had, you know, a place to stay there, and that's how it happened. And I would think this year was the 5th year, but probably because of COVID, I don't know what happened. We didn't get to go back.
Yeah.
Which we'd like to do in the future. Because it was a lot of fun going to look for piping plovers. Ambergris key. That was okay. Yeah, that key. That was Ambergris was the place where we saw a ton of plovers.
Okay. Yeah, it's another thing I'm interested in. I'm also interested in part because also the Kirtland's warbler winters down in the Bahamas, and so I'm just thinking about some different different things.
Oh yeah, that would be an awesome, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, do it.
and I've also been up to see them in their breeding locations here in northern Michigan.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Oh, ooh, we have an off topic. I'm a few miles from Presque Isle in Pittsburgh. Okay, that's 2 hours. And so my trips need to be planned a bit. So I wanted to know when the migratory season begins. I joined the club during duck season this fall. Well, May is your best migratory experience at Presque Isle, depending on the species that you're looking for. If you're looking for warblers and all the land birds, it can be early May to the third week in May, depending on weather and happenstance. The Presque Isle Audubon has done the festival. We tend to organize it for the second weekend in May, just because that's like the most likely weekend for the festival, or for a good migration. But in the past, we've had good migrations at the beginning of May, early, and then we've also had late migrations due to weather. I recall one year where we had the festival early because of the keynotes schedule, and it was decent. It wasn't great, but then the next weekend that would have been the festival weekend, it snowed. So that's about best I can offer. If keep your eye on the weather. Watch the radar and see when the birds might be moving through. Yes, Carolyn said south winds brings bird to us, so keep your eye on the weather.
Doesn't Cornell have some sort of a website where they have migration patterns and it's updated daily or even hourly or something?
There's several different places where you can go in, and I don't know them off the top of my head. I used to use an app that is now defunct that brought in the bird radar, and I haven't found a good replacement for it yet. But yeah, if you look at I don't know, Google bird radar or something, and you should be able to find something. Bob, do you have one?
Well, Birdcast, I think Birdcast, if you search Birdcast, it'll come up. It's a Cornell Lab program, and it every day I think they project out how things are looking, and so you'll get these pretty good movements, yeah, with the south winds. But the funny thing about that is this is just my take. I don't feel like that's a hard and fast rule. Like sometimes I will look at the Birdcast and it's just blowing up with birds, and I'll go out and it's not that great a day, and other days it'll be a day after that maybe that is better. But I think these generally, the warm fronts that come through in the spring, as those come through, more and more waves of migrants come through, and but they really are in these dense little waves and clusters. Like I feel like they move through so quickly. If you could easily miss a species if you're not out quite a bit. So anyway, that's a little off topic from plovers, but
it was an off topic. It was off topic question. I was going to say that when I go out, I'm out there 6 days a week, 5 or 6 days a week. And I'm not there looking for warblers.
Yeah.
But you can clearly tell when the warblers are moving through. And I would tell the gentleman who asked that if you look at radar, Erie doesn't have a radar station that shows up on those birdcasts. So, you can look at Erie all day, every day for a year and never see any kind of bird donut around Erie because there's no radar. So you have to kind of I always like, well, if Pittsburgh is lighting up, then maybe Erie will be lighting up too. And you just can't, like Bob said, sometimes it's you really tell, but then all of a sudden, last year, I can't remember when it was, but we had this huge fallout of Bernie and Cape May warblers, bay-breasted. I mean, I actually, for the first time ever, I had warblers at Gallpoint on an open sand plain. There were so many of them.
Wow.
They were just everywhere. I mean, I've never seen so many blackburnian warblers all at one time in my life.
Wow.
And they were hopping around like sparrows at Gallpoint, which is a sand plain with no trees.
That's amazing.
It was very bizarre. Okay. Anybody else?
I want to know where and when was the ancient mural at?
Yeah. Tell us about that ancient muralette.
Yeah. So the funny thing about this is it's not the first ancient muralette in Illinois. I think there was one like 20 years ago or something. And this really is a credit to, I think, one amazing birder who we have in Chicago. His name is Bob Hughes. He found the muralette. Like, who in the world would even be thinking to look for that? But that's him. So it was offshore, visible from Montrose Point in Lake Michigan, and I think it was in November of 2019. And so that was incredible. But they I guess they do venture inland from the Pacific. I think it's the Pacific coast, and but it's also part of it is Montrose has an interesting geography, and it just seems to attract and somewhat it's a product also of a lot of birders being there on a consistent basis. There's a factor there, but it is an interesting geography, and it does attract just all sorts of oddities. But then there are other things about it that, like, for example, I don't know that a pileated woodpecker has probably ever been seen at Montrose. I don't know that a screech owl has been seen there. I don't know that, like, broad-winged hawk even. There's certain species it just does not attract by dint of its location for a reason. And it has some similarities to what you're describing in that it's kind of, there's a big sandy area, it's treeless in places, so that might be a factor. But like tufted titmouse, we had a tufted titmouse there this summer, and people were posting it on like a rare bird alert because or this spring, and it was because that's actually an unusual bird for Montrose Point, which is crazy because growing up in Cleveland, we had them at our feeders all the time. It was just never even a question. So but yeah, so it's an interesting place. Every place has its own quirks, I guess, as you get used to, get to know it. So
yep. I'm still holding out hope for a dovekie.
Yeah,
Presque Isle.
Well, that would be
on my list of things that I must have.
I think there's one found. It was dead, unfortunately. But dovekie was found in Michigan in the past year, I want to say. So you might have a chance.
You never know.
You never know.
Sue, do you want to talk about the upcoming events?
The only one I'm aware of is next Wednesday's cleanup at Fry's Landing. I have a lot of people who signed up so far, so don't feel obligated if you don't have time, but we'll be there from 9 o'clock on. Right now, I think I've got about 13 people. So I'm going to go
Where
ahead.
are you meeting? Fry's?
Fry's Landing, yeah.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Because you're also doing like the other section. So I was just curious.
Well, we're going to meet there and disperse from there.
Okay. So Wednesday, Fry's Landing, what time?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock. And it goes to 7. You can stop in anytime.
Yeah, well, right now, everybody who has signed up said they're going to be there mostly in the morning. So if nobody, because you have to pre-register, so I know what time to expect you. So if nobody registers for the afternoon and we're all done, because there's so many of us, we might just end at noon because there's a big group coming.
Okay. All right. And there's free cookies at this event. I'd like to point that out. I'm working, so I can't be there in the morning. Yeah. And where do you register to?
Oh, they can just send in me an email, president@prescottaudubon.org.
Anything else? You're in charge of this meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, I have nothing else. Does any other members have any announcements? Chime right in.
Oh, there's a new message. Oh, a program in May. Yes, we are going to have a program in May, and the program is about, and I should have had this prepared, I'm sorry. A gentleman from the International Crane Foundation, who's actually on the board of the International Crane Foundation. He's out of Cleveland, Ohio, and he's going to be talking about cranes of various different kinds. And he's put a lot of effort into restoration and conservation in a variety of different ways. And I apologize for not being prepared to answer that question.
Okay, and Carolyn asked about a field trip. Yeah, 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, be ready at the Stall Center for the sidewalk trail. And then Issy mentioned about the Earth Day Erie Facebook and web page, things that are happening all this week for Earth Day. When will banging begin? I'm not sure what you mean, Ruth.
Banding,
perhaps? Oh, banding. Dear. Okay, banding is for Mary.
Thanks for that laugh, Ruth. Banding is actually already started, but is not open to the public at this point because they don't have their COVID-19 work papers approved by DCNR. We're hoping to have the station opened on April 22nd, which is Earth Day. But there's no guarantee that we've have our protocols approved by DCNR by that point, but we're hoping that that's what happens. So anytime after April 22nd is when banding will be available to the public.
Well, I guess that's it. Bob, thank you so much. That was the best film. Gives us hope. Yeah.
Yeah, but good luck. I hope that piping plovers return there and you have a great nesting season. I'm sure we'll keep tabs on each other's successes. So
I'll let you know in August.
yeah. Yeah, sorry. We both keep tabs on your successes.
Right.
I'll keep it to myself and you
Okay.
can keep it to yourself.
And then we can have Mary let us know what happened in Chicago after you get in touch with her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll be happy. I'm sure you can find all the information on Chicago that you want. That will be publicly available immediately. But I in August at some point I'll be able to share the news.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm going to stop recording, but I'm going to leave the meeting open because we might want to chat like we've done at previous meetings then too. Okay. Thanks again. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm going to sign off because I have to work in the morning. So
Okay.
I'm out of here.
Okay. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.